Greetings and welcome to Illinois in Focus Weekend Edition, powered by the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop, Illinois editor at Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. This week with Illinois in Focus, the Center Square reporter Jim Talamonte and I will discuss politics at the Illinois State Fair, the continued debate about gerrymandering, a move to find a way to lower energy bills, and President Donald Trump singling out Illinois and no cash bail laws. All of that and more when we return for more Illinois in Focus, powered by the Center Square.
Some people would call him a loser. He ran for state office. He was beaten. He started a business. He failed. He ran for Congress. He lost. He was nominated for vice president. He lost again. But he knew only those who never tried are the real losers. And Abraham Lincoln was no loser. Persistence. Pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.
Welcome back to Illinois in Focus. I'm Greg Bishop. Political rhetoric at the Illinois State Fair that was competing with the hot temperatures as Democrats and Republicans rallied party faithful for speeches and deep-fried foods. Joining me to break down some of the party's positions is the Center Square reporter Jim Talamonte. Jim, it's always an interesting week when the State Fair is in town here in Springfield, and it brings with it all of the politics heading into an election year. Wednesday was Governor's Day, and the Democrats showed up in fine style with a whole bunch of people at a breakfast, and then they went to the State Fairgrounds to rally. You tuned into all of that. What's the big message they're carrying for the Democrat Party faithful?
Oh, that's really interesting. And Greg, I guess it's kind of what their message has been, and that's that Illinois is the blueprint for the rest of the country, that this is how Democrats are going to win in 2026, that the rest of the country will want to do what Illinois is doing. And Juliana Stratton called it, said Illinois is the blueprint and the country is looking at us an example. I think she meant Democrats around the country, because obviously Illinois politicians have been among the most vocal, perhaps the most vocal, and the most vehement and at times even violent in their rhetoric against President Trump and his administration. And we heard a lot of that over the course of the day Wednesday at Democrats' Day or Governor's Day at the State Fair. It ranged from the Democratic Party Chair Lisa Hernandez saying that Republicans are taking away our food and they're scapegoating immigrants. Attorney General Kwame Raoul said President Trump was stealing your money. And we heard just a lot of the same things we've been hearing, but the two of them, Hernandez and Raoul, were in the afternoon during the Governor's Day event on the lawn. In the morning, we heard from Hakeem Jeffries, and he gave a fairly long speech to the county chairs, the Democrat County Chairs Association, who had their annual breakfast brunch. And he went after the president on inflation, which was one of the hallmarks, I guess, or one of the criticisms of Trump's predecessor, Joe Biden, was the rather heavy inflation the country experienced during especially the last 2 or 3 years of the Biden term. And Jeffrey said the president, Donald Trump, promised to lower costs on day one. We have to lower the cost of living in the United States. And Governor Pritzker talked about taxes, even though he has been criticized for raising taxes dozens of times. He said it's Republicans who are raising taxes with the president's tariffs. So, even get into some economic issues, which hasn't as much been a theme of the Democrat criticism of Donald Trump. But that was part of it on Wednesday at Governor's Day.
Obvious political rhetoric. We're going to hear a lot of this heading into the November 2026 election. But Jim, we've got primaries to get to before that, and that's going to be happening in March. Petitions are already being circulated for the major parties, the Republicans and Democrats, going around getting people to sign their nominating petition forms to turn those in. Some pretty key races that we're going to be covering here with the Center Square and we'll be talking about with Illinois in Focus. And that is the U.S. Senate race. Democrats have a choice to make here, and you got at least three big names that are in there. Juliana Stratton, the lieutenant governor, Robin Kelly, a current sitting U.S. congressperson, and also Raja Krishnamurthy, a congressman from the Chicago suburbs. They all took to the stage. And how did they get received?
Yeah, really interesting. It seemed that Stratton and Kelly were a little more intent on pushing their campaign messages. Krishnamurthy, I think, is probably the early favorite, just given that he has a lot more money. And, I'm in Chicago, so I tend to look at these from a Chicago election standpoint, which is that, well, you have two women who may kind of split the vote a little bit. Even though Juliana Stratton has Governor Pritzker's backing and figures to benefit tremendously already, the governor, it seems, has gone out of his way to make the lieutenant governor, the current lieutenant governor, part of his announcements, his press conferences. There was a heavy union-backed legislation the governor signed on Thursday that Juliana Stratton was there, and she spoke at that event. And we've seen in the governor's press releases, Juliana Stratton quoted regularly. So I think they're the heavyweights in the fight. Robin Kelly, obviously very well known, long time in Congress. But she's got, like I said, three candidates who have a lot of backing in their own backyards. I think especially Kelly and Krishnamurthy. But like I said, that's going to be an interesting race to watch. And again, right now, the early campaign donation leader in terms of raising money has been Krishnamurthy. But that could change with Stratton having the governor's backing.
Of course, you've got the Republican side of things starting to shape up, too, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. But still focusing on Democrats, a whole bunch of names also popping in there for who could take over the state comptroller position after Susana Mendoza announced that she's also not seeking another term. But Democrats had to start their rally with President Donald Trump taking focus on Illinois policies early in the week. Jim, the president, announcing that he's helping to get public safety under control in Washington, D.C. by bringing in the National Guard to help with policing. He said that he could possibly bring the National Guard to the city of Chicago. And he also talked about the no cash bail laws, essentially saying that he wants Congress to reverse those no cash bail laws. So all of that circling before the Democrats took to the stage Wednesday, and all of that also as Governor J.B. Pritzker continues to be asked questions about his political future. Jim, has he said yes or no to him running for president in 2028?
He hasn't. He said, I'm not ruling it out. He's obviously considering it, but he hasn't really said one way or the other. And it is still early. I mean, let's face it, both parties are still slating candidates for 2026, let alone 2028. But President Trump minced no words about both Governor Pritzker and Chicago Mayor Johnson, called them both incompetent. And of course, the Chicago mayor returned the favor, and then Governor Pritzker as well, has been calling President Trump a cheater and has taken aim at the president's previous, what he said, moral decisions, those kinds of things. So, but as far as running for president, everyone just kind of assumes that Pritzker's certainly looking at it. He's serious about it. Will he kind of read the tea leaves in terms of how the race is shaping up before jumping in, or is he pretty much going in and just not, saying it's too early to actually announce? That's hard to say. And he may want to get as well into the 2026 gubernatorial race as he can, or even through it if possible, before he worries about because as soon as he says he's running for president, that's going to be the immediate criticism. We've already heard it from Republicans. Well, he's more focused on the White House than he is on what's happening here in our state of Illinois, and our state is suffering because of it. That's been some of the criticism from Republicans. So I sense that Pritzker is very serious about running for president, but I don't expect him to make any kind of confirmation for quite some time.
Some of the rhetoric that was also apparent for weeks ahead of the state fair, but obviously for Governor's Day, where Democrats rallied, was all about Texas and gerrymandering. And you mentioned it earlier, Pritzker saying that Trump is a cheater, and they're trying to add 5, possibly even more Republican congressional seats in Texas ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. And Democrats fleeing Texas, coming to a state like Illinois, Illinois, and it really elevated that debate. And of course, with the Center Square, we've been reporting on a lawsuit, Jim, and that's a story you've worked on today, here Thursday as we record this, a lawsuit that the Texas House of Representatives filed in Illinois to try to essentially get Illinois to recognize the Texas warrants for absconding Democrats fleeing Texas to come to Illinois. And they were trying to block votes on a new map that Texas Republicans want. What's the latest on that lawsuit?
Well, it's and Greg, you talked to Senator Jill Tracy about this, Republican from Quincy. She was joined Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton in this suit, and she said, well, it's still in a way out there. She said our petition for immediate emergency relief, the judge in that case said, ruled essentially didn't have a legal basis to have jurisdiction in that, but the other part of that petition could still potentially be addressed. And then Senator Tracy said, well, essentially, I'm Illinois counsel, but it's the Texas Attorney General and then the Texas Republicans who are leading the charge here. And so they may move forward. She also said that the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, as this current special session the governor called in Texas is ending, he will call another. And Jill Tracy said, well, there's talk that these Texas Democrats may return for that to Texas. And Senator Tracy, well, that's kind of been the goal all along, is to get them back in Texas where they took an oath to perform their duties. So it's going to be interesting to see. There's been a lot of drama, and just here in Illinois, all I can think of is, boy, when it came to redistricting in Illinois, we didn't get this national attention, even though our maps, as I said last week, look like quite the jigsaw puzzle. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next time Illinois' maps come up for discussion, if this will draw the kind of national attention. We haven't seen, of course, Republicans flee the state in protest as the Texas Democrats did, but couldn't help but think of the juxtaposition there of the Texas Democrats being in Illinois, where we have probably the most gerrymandered maps in the nation.
It's pretty incredible, Jim, and I think that that sense of hypocrisy that Republicans point towards when they see Democrats in Illinois complain about gerrymandering, that's going to be a theme, and it was a theme today at Republican Day at the Illinois State Fair. Again, this is Illinois in Focus Weekend Edition with the Center Square, and you can read all of these stories and more at thecentersquare.com. But Jim, I was able to get out there for Republican Day, and of course, they're pointing to, gerrymandering in Illinois being done by Democrats and saying it's hypocritical for Democrats to be worried about that. But really, they're pointing to the economic issues. Illinois having the highest property taxes, Illinois having burdensome business regulations, Illinois having, among other, high taxes and poor education and social policies that take away rights from parents. And these are the themes that Republicans are really going after. But as we watch, the different names pop up for Democrat primary, for U.S. Senate and such, we have some names popping up for who could be the gubernatorial candidate for the Republicans. James Mandrick, he's the DuPage County Sheriff, and he's vying to get the party's nomination. And he says that he comes from a background of law enforcement and being able to navigate the political scene, making sure that he's working with Democrats, but with conservative values moving forward. So Mandrick is obviously going to be an interesting individual to watch as we get through this primary, but there's other names out there, Jim. Ted Dabrowski, the WirePoint's president, he announced here at the fair that he's going to possibly make an announcement soon on his intentions. But the way he's talking about the issues indicates that he may be getting into this race as well. Those are just a couple of names. Of course, petitions are still circulating, and we'll have the filing period coming up where we'll really know in paper who's going to be on the ballot March 17th for the Republican primary for governor, and also possibly, the U.S. Senate could have several names pop in there for the Republican nomination, and then up and down the ballot as well for members of Congress. So the Illinois State Fair definitely was a place for deep fried politics, Jim, and I was able to get myself a couple of corn dogs, so
Excellent.
Got that taken care of.
Just not the one the governor offered you.
Yeah, and for those who didn't see that, an interesting kind of way to kick off the Illinois State Fair with the ribbon cutting last Thursday. After the news conference, the governor approached me with 2 corn dogs, one with ketchup and one with mustard, and asked which one I wanted. It's kind of a play off of a question I asked him either last year or the year before about, giving people choice. He says he's pro-choice. What about giving people choice for corn dog condiments? So, yeah, I will say this. I'll disclose, Jim, I don't discriminate. I put both ketchup and mustard on my corn dog.
So it was a fun moment. I noticed a lot of the other reporters and just the crowd gathered around got a kick out of the governor offering you the choice, if you will.
It was something else. All right. So enough about the fair. The fair is obviously about the agriculture in Illinois. There's tons of activities, tons of displays, the live music, the food, and that runs through Sunday. So Sunday is the last day of the Illinois State Fair. It's kind of one of those last hurrahs of the summer before kids get back into school. So we've got of course a new school year coming up as the state fair comes to an end. Jim, obviously the economic issues are going to be a big issue heading into the election. One that we've heard the businesses and residential consumers talk about is energy prices. From Ameren, Illinois to ComEd, we're talking 30, 40, 50% rate increases for consumer and businesses, small businesses alike. How are we going to get a hold on this? Because, when we've talked with people before in the past, there's a lot of finger pointing. But there might be some kind of cohesive coming together on what the next steps might be.
Yeah, indeed, Greg. And it's certainly, I think, I know I've seen the highest electric bills I've had in ComEd territory, and Ameren customers are dealing with the same, if not worse. But I talked to State Senator Sue Rezin of Morris, and she has been, for years now, she's been a proponent of nuclear energy and pushing for an end to the state's moratorium on nuclear projects, both small and large scale. And Governor Pritzker actually suggested that he would be open to ending the moratorium on new large-scale nuclear plants. Now, the governor did veto Senator Rezin's bill a couple of years ago, which would have ended that moratorium. He did eventually agree to end the moratorium on small modular nuclear plants, the SMRs. And now he's suggested at the fair that he would be open to lifting this. He said a decades-old moratorium. And Senator Rezin said, well, we need to move on nuclear because we need, in an AI age, with data centers, just the demand for energy is going through the roof. And, of course, that's part of the prices going up. He said, we aren't going to be able to compete. And the best way to get this large base load power at low cost is nuclear. And I talked with one nuclear physicist who said it's actually the safest form of energy. The governor had previously said earlier in the year that, well, we want to move forward with nuclear, but we really have to be careful. We have to have safety. So Senator Rezin says she hopes this can move forward in the fall veto session. She also proposed legislation that would streamline permitting for small nuclear reactors, because as we've seen with so many of our state agencies in Illinois, there's red tape. It takes a long time. So Rezin introduced Senate Bill 2681. This would require state agencies to act on permit applications for small modular nuclear reactors within 150 days of the application being deemed complete. And then barring some legitimate extension, if the state agency doesn't act, well, that application would be considered approved. And Rezin's position is that this gives companies predictability so they can understand a time frame, because if they don't have that, other states have passed this kind of legislation. And already some of these companies are building in Indiana and Wisconsin where they have this predictability, which they just don't have in Illinois. And we're talking about major investments by these energy companies, billions of dollars, Rezin said. So she's hoping that, too, will get called and passed during the fall veto session. Although, as you know, Greg, we have a lot of potential things on the table in the fall veto session.
Yeah, absolutely, including the transit cliff, where it's $760 million. They have to find how to fill before the end of the year, and how that's going to be sorted out. We'll be continuing to report on here with the Center Square. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, joined by Jim Talamonte of the Center Square. Let's talk about accountability. A couple of different stories here in this space, starting with former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan. All indication is, Jim, he's going to go to prison.
At this point, Greg, I don't really see another legal option for him to avoid prison on October 13th. I mean, unless he, flees the country. Judge John Robert Blakey, again, a federal judge appointed by President Obama, issued a 44-page document. And once again, this judge, well, as I've mentioned here, that he, at times during other hearings and even during the Madigan case, appeared to be a compassionate, very thoughtful guy. But he's come down hard on Michael Madigan in terms of sentencing and in terms of rejecting claims by his defense attorneys. And he actually rejected Madigan's motion for release, to stay out of prison during appeal, in two different ways. One is that the judge wrote that Madigan failed to meet the burden he had to show that his appeal would raise any substantial question of law or fact. And the judge numerous times in this 44-page document said that, Madigan failed to prove, there's just no evidence, it doesn't meet the sufficiency, just one time after another, rejecting. And there was also a note the judge put at the end, and this is, I think, on Madigan's attorneys more than him, but there's a 15-page limit for these kinds of memoranda, and his attorneys exceeded that. And the judge made a rather pointed note of that and said, this motion is also denied on that alternative basis. So the strong words from the judge. But again, this Judge Blakey knows these corruption laws inside and out. His father helped write some of them. And I think most Illinoisans, I haven't really heard any criticism of the way he's handled this case. I think he's been firm, very thoughtful throughout. And once again, in denying the Madigan motion, we saw no waffling from Judge Blakey, put it that way. His statement was strong.
Another story that you put together, Jim, concerns the state's child welfare agency and some claims that a state representative is making that the Department of Children and Family Services denies. Tell us about the possible use of interns in investigating families.
Well, it's not possible, Greg. It's known. It's documented. Now, that in of itself wouldn't be a problem, but this has the potential to have huge ramifications. State Rep Jed Davis, Yorkville Republican, says that investigations by uncertified interns have led to children being removed from homes. And he said there's a case in his area where he says this was, he believes, wrongly done. And according to Davis, in statute, any DCFS employee or intern as well would have to have both a license and a certification. He's saying DCFS was using interns with only one of those, only with the license, not with the certification. Now, if they had the certification, it would be fine, but he says he has documentation from DCFS itself showing that a case investigated by an intern was by an intern who was not certified, and DCFS actually confirmed that to him. And so DCFS issued a rather a strong statement opposing Davis, saying he's wrong, he has the facts wrong, he has the law wrong. But Davis' documentation, to me, puts DCFS in a difficult situation here, because it doesn't appear that he's wrong at all. And this is an agency, DCFS, that, of course, it's a difficult job. It's a difficult task. They're overwhelmed at times, but State House Republicans just a couple of weeks before had called for accountability from the governor after the Auditor General's report showed that 29 of 34 findings for DCFS were repeat issues from prior years, which means they hadn't been addressed. And State Rep Tom Weber actually listed the number of children. He listed names of children who died while on DCFS radar. So lots of problems for DCFS. And this case in particular, involving uncertified interns handling investigations, if this is the case, well, I mean, you can imagine the potential lawsuit liability the state is looking at.
Well, Jim, that's all the time we've got here. Thank you for joining us. For Jim Talamonte, I'm Greg Bishop. Listeners can keep up with this and much more at thecentersquare.com.